Shakespeare was born in April in 1564 and died on the 23rd of April in 1660. Shakespeare is one of the greatest English writers of all time, and his work includes comedies, tragedies, and sonnets. His most famous works are Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, and his sonnets. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more tempered. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. By thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long live this, and this gives life to thee. Sonnet 18 is one of the best known sonnets out of all the 155 sonnets Shakespeare has ever written. And overall, it's about Shakespeare comparing his love to a summer's day, where he argues that his beloved is better than a summer's day and states that she will live on forever. Sonnet 18 is a typical Shakespearean sonnet. It consists of 3 quatrains followed by a couplet. It has the characteristic rhyme scheme A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, G G. And also it has the turn between the 8th and 9th line, where it goes from talking about the characteristics of summer over to talking about the theme, eternity, which I will talk more about later on. In the first quatrain, he is comparing his beloved to a summer's day and tells that his beloved is more desirable and has even more temper than summer. He talks about how the wind shakes the flowering trees before summer comes, but also that when the summer comes, it goes by way too quickly. The second quatrain is about how summer days are too hot but sometimes also cloudy. Also, he talks about how everything beautiful eventually fades, and that changes either happens by accident or by nature's natural cycles. In the third quatrain, he talks about his beloved and how she has the best characteristics of summer, and also how these will never go away, and that the same counts for her beauty. And in the couplet at the end, he says that as long as there are humans on this planet, her life and her beauty will live out through his sonnet. Shakespeare starts his poem out with the line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" In this line, he uses a metaphor where he is comparing his beloved to all of the best characteristics of a summer's day. Also, Shakespeare uses personification in the line, "The eye of heaven shines." Here, Shakespeare gives the sun a human attribute. Shakespeare also uses anaphora, where he, in the last 2 lines, line 13 and 14, starts both lines out with the words "so long," which emphasizes his point. And last but not least, he uses alliteration, where he writes fair from fair, which gives the sonnet a rhythm. When you first start reading the sonnet, it seems like the typical love sonnet, but as you read further on, you see that this sonnet is really about the power of written words. Even though Shakespeare starts out talking about the typical love, he ends it off with stating that her love will live on in his sonnet because written words live on in an eternity. When this poem is read out loud, you can hear how perfectly it all falls together. The lines are written in perfect iambic pentameter and the tone is very formal. Also, the sonnet has a neutral mood, but you still get a feeling of warmth when reading it.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it's an ever fixed mark, that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's full, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. The structure of the poem is it consists of 14 verse lines, which is very characteristic for Shakespearean sonnet. The rhyme scheme is A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. The last two verse lines is GG, which means it is a couplet, and this is also very characteristic for a Shakespearean sonnet. Another characteristic for the Shakespearean sonnet is that it consists of a turn, which means a shift in gears. And in this sonnet, it happens between verse line 8 and 9, when some changes in ideas enters the poem. And this is shown by love is not timeful. And in this example, it is the image of love as a guiding star is suddenly replaced by a personification as love as an internal, everlasting force that resists death. And therefore is the idea about love being immortal introduced. I will analyze the sonnet quatrain by quatrain. The first quatrain tells something about how people who have true love should not let anything get between them. Shakespeare explains true love by saying marriage of true minds. It also tells something about that when change comes, whether it is spiritual, emotional, or physical, should true lovers not let this come between them. And this is also even if one person in the relationship gets more distant, should their love still remain because it is a marriage of true minds. Yeah. In the second quatrain, does Shakespeare use nautical terms to describe how love can conquer all? He does this by comparing love to a dependable star. Love is consistent and honest. He also does this by comparing love to a lighthouse, that love will guide you to safety even if there is a storm.
In the last couplet, Shakespeare tells that what he just wrote is the description of true love, and that if one man ever disagrees with him, he says that they obviously have never experienced true love in their lives.
Shakespeare uses personification in this sonnet, and this is shown in the verse line, love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks. In this verse line does Shakespeare personify love as an internal, everlasting force that resists death, and he introduces the idea as love as immortal. Also is the poetic device imagery used. The image of a storm is used to show how love never can be shaken. And this is shown in the verse line, it is the star to every wandering bark. And this is because before modern navigation was developed, sailors used the stars to guide them. They were dependable and honest, and they could always be trusted. This is also an example of how Shakespeare uses nautical terms to create this image of a storm. Also is the poetic device alliteration used, and this is shown in the examples compass, come, and whose worth. Alliterations are used to create a rhythm in the sonnet. The main theme and message is that the love is unconditional, and even though conditions change, will true love still remain? It is hard to tell the setting for this sonnet, and this is for obvious reasons. There is no specific setting. There are no events that takes place and no references to a place at all. However, does the sonnet create a specific imaginary space through its key use of nautical imagery? Um, in the sonnet, there's created the mental picture of a storm-tossed sea, a ship, stars, and a lighthouse. And this imagery helps the reader in the understanding of true love. The tone is formal, yet it is sometimes clear that it is a real person who is telling his point of view. This is shown in the fifth verse line, where, which is, "Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark." The "oh no" reminds us that it is a real person who is getting his claims across. The narrator uses simple language to get the points across and to illustrate its claims. The last couplet is used as a closing argument, and this is because it is bold and challenging.
As told in the analysis, the sonnets are written in iambic pentameter, which is also the case in Shakespeare's Macbeth. In Macbeth, the three witches speak in iambic pentameter, but the difference here is that in Macbeth it's written in unrhymed iambic pentameter, where it is rhyming iambic pentameter in the two sonnets.